Resilience is not just part of a mission of Families First. It is a key driving force behind how all of us can make change in our lives and for our communities. Next up, we want to dive a bit deeper into resilience with a fireside chat between 3 individuals on the Families First team who help drive this approach. DePriest Waddy, its CEO, Dr. Edward M. Valentine, the Director of Clinical Services, and John Kennebrew, the Counseling Program Manager. They'll share more about Families First's innovative new ways to build, measure, and sustain resilience in families and communities.
Thank you, Ella. And I want to first thank my friends at Delta for hosting this segment of the event. What an awesome studio and a great experience. So John, recently you and your team hit the streets on the west side. What did you guys find?
One of the major things we found out was that people in our backyard don't really know about the services that we have at Families First. And so we were able to educate them, and they have a greater understanding of all of the various resources that we offer.
You know, I was really curious scientifically to understand what is really happening when it comes to our communities and access to care. You know, as a neuroscientist myself, I often think in a social, biological perspective. You know, the level of bonding, is there biomarkers to level bonding, considering all of the social challenges that we have been experiencing, for example, the pandemic. So we have been working into validating our own tool for measures and see how to evaluate what is occurring from the psychological, sociological, and biological perspective of what we are seeing.
You know, we heard from our youth in the first segment early on, and how much these kids are carrying in order to be resilient day to day and just learn. And so when you speak to our work around resilience, it always starts when you're young, because those behaviors are learned at such a young age. Dr. V, tell us about our resiliency work and why it's important to change behaviors versus changing people.
There's some resiliency that is innate, right? So we have the one that we're born with based on the survival mechanisms. But then there's this other form of resiliency that is like what the tribe contributes to survival. And we want to move people from surviving mode to thriving mode. So that's where we are focusing now. So
tell us about how the scoring worked, and were there any epiphanies as a result of the data that you gathered so far?
Yeah, so we had developed a screener that we named the Families First Resiliency Needs Screener. Part of the measure that we are using there is a very simple form that we are taking components of the social determinants of health. And then there's a component of the protective factor, which is connectedness, that unity piece. Mm-hmm. And then the last pillar of measure that we are looking at is future and goal orientation to know where the client is going to.
One great part about the resiliency scale as well is helping individuals identify some things that they may not know for themselves. Mm-hmm. And so overcoming is a major part of the process of them becoming their best selves.
And you know, one of the things that we have noticed is that some people are in different scores in different pillars. So it really depends on the magnitude of the presenting challenges that they come with.
I heard a statistic from a therapist recently. Youth in the inner city, by the time they graduate from high school, 90% of them will have witnessed either a violent crime, either passively or actively. I first thought that was a very rich proposition, but as I see some of these things playing out on the news, I'm beginning to think that maybe that's true. Mm-hmm. How do you guys see that playing out in your lines of work?
We're definitely seeing that within the clients that our clinicians are having face-to-face with. Trauma is something that we all experience. Anxiety is something we all experience. But you'd be surprised at the level of endurance and resiliency that so many of our young clients, our youth, are able to push through and overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, complex trauma feels normal, you know, to a lot of the kids that we serve. In fact, there was a young man that John was working with that told me, well, I love the hood. You know, I want to stay here. This is what I want to do with my life. You know, and that is the type of resiliency that I'm talking about when it comes to the survival mode. And we are hoping that people do a lot better when it comes to complex trauma. And with the FFRNS, I think that we're getting closer and closer to that, because it's not like a psychometrical tool that is really hard to fill out, and it's not vast, and it's not hard to analyze. It's easy also for the clinicians, and that's the reason why we have partners reaching out to us trying to see if they could apply the FFRNS in their already state-of-the-art, well-established clinic.
Thank you. And I must say, this problem is not going to go away anytime soon. I don't see Families First ever putting itself out of business. We've been around 131 years. I think we can be pretty certain that we're going to be around for the next 100 years doing this phenomenal work. And I want to thank you both for being here today and sharing your truth and educating us around this work. So thank you very much.
Thank you.